The apostles taught about Jesus at every opportunity. Wherever they taught, they told of Jesus' death and resurrection. Often they reminded their listeners of the words of the prophets who told of Jesus' coming. In chapter 1, Jesus spoke with his disciples and told them to be witnesses of all he had said and done. Then Jesus returned to heaven. The Holy Spirit gave Jesus' followers the power to tell people about Jesus. In chapter 9, Jesus spoke to Saul from heaven. Shortly after this, Saul was renamed Paul, and he became a believer. At that time, Ananias said to Paul, "The God of our fathers has chosen you to know his will and to see the righteous one," who's Jesus, "and to hear words from his mouth. You will be his witness to all men of what you have seen and heard." Paul traveled all over the world telling people about Jesus Christ.
Okay, I have a very serious question for you. Have you ever known someone who has changed so much that you thought they might be faking it? Well, in today's Bible story, which you would find in Acts 9:19, you're going to find out about a man who people thought were kind of faking it. Do you know who it is? If you guessed Saul, you're absolutely correct. We know that he was an angry man and that he arrested people who followed Jesus. We know that he was a Pharisee. We know that he went to different places to arrest people, even who believed in Jesus, who were preaching about Jesus. Well, he even went to a city in Damascus to arrest more of Jesus' followers. And, that's when he fell to the ground. He was blinded by that light, and he heard Jesus' voice. And he says, "You will take the good news about me to all kinds of people." That's what Jesus said to Saul. Well, Saul had stayed in Damascus for a while, and a man came and prayed for him. And soon, Saul was going around Damascus preaching about Jesus and that he was the Messiah. And that was a big, big change. Saul started going from synagogue to synagogue, which are like churches. So from church to church to tell the Jewish people that Jesus was God's son. It was so different now. He was not hurting Jesus' followers. No, he wasn't. He was now trying to help people learn about Jesus and follow him. And everyone was talking about him, Saul, and the huge change. Saul's preaching was making some people angry, though. And they wanted Saul to arrest Jesus' followers because that's what he used to do, because he was a Pharisee, and that's what they did. Finally, some men made a plan to kill Saul. Can you believe that? You see, there's only one gate into Damascus, and so they decided to watch that one gate. So at that time, it was real common for cities to be surrounded by a gate of sorts, usually a huge wall, and the only way to get in and out was a gate. So they decided to watch that one gate, and as soon as Saul started out the gate, they could catch him. So they thought they had this great plan. They were like, Saul's going to be easy to catch. Now, Saul had heard about the plan, though, and he wanted some of the help from people in Damascus who followed Jesus. They had this great idea on how they were going to help their new friend. They got a big basket, one big enough to hold Saul. So that's a pretty big basket, isn't it? They got a really strong rope, and they tied the rope to the basket. And can you guess what they did? From a very high window on the outer part of the city, they lowered the basket with Saul in it very carefully. Do you think he made it out okay? He did. His friends made sure that he got out just fine. And the men watching the gate at some point realized Saul wasn't coming. He wasn't in the city, but he wasn't coming through that gate. How did he get out? They didn't know. Well, when Saul escaped, he went to Jerusalem. And when Saul had left Jerusalem, he had left to arrest Jesus' followers in Damascus. Do you remember that? So we're going back. Now he was back. He was so excited to tell the people in Jerusalem all about Jesus and all that Jesus had told him. I'm going to read Acts 9:26. It says, "When Saul arrived in Jerusalem, he tried to meet with the believers, but they were all afraid of him. They thought he was only pretending to be a believer." So these believers were afraid to meet him because they thought, Saul is the guy who's trying to find us to kill us. Well, for all they knew, this was a trick. Saul had wanted to arrest Jesus' followers. They wanted nothing to do with him. How do you think Saul felt? Do you think he could understand where they were coming from? No matter how Saul felt, it didn't matter. God was with him, and Saul was part of God's family now. And God knew just who to bring along. Barnabas. Now, Barnabas had listened to Saul's story, and he paid attention to what Saul had said. Barnabas decided that Saul was telling the truth, that there really was a change in him, that he really did meet Jesus in Damascus. So Barnabas took Saul to the leaders of God's family in Jerusalem, and he told them what had happened to Saul. He told them how Saul had changed. Barnabas also told how Saul had preached the good news about Jesus in Damascus, and that he wasn't afraid to preach right here in Jerusalem about Jesus either. After hearing what Barnabas had to say, Jesus' followers in Jerusalem accepted Saul, and they invited him into the group. And then Saul went all over Jerusalem telling people about Jesus. Once again, Saul told so many people about Jesus that he had made some more people mad. They, again, wanted to kill him. So one more time, Saul's new friends helped him. They helped him get out of Jerusalem safely. They helped him get down to the ocean and put him on a boat going to his hometown, Tarsus. God was with Saul. He brought Saul the friends he needed. God can always help us.
Hebrews 13:6. The Lord is my helper. I will not be afraid. What can man do to me? Hebrews 13:6.